Grognard here for another edition of this wonderful, wonderful video podcast. Okay, I wanted to talk today about some of the things I do for coming up with adventures, GMing, DMing, whatever. I've got most of my, first of all, let's start with an idea. Ideas are sometimes hard to come by, so you got to be open to anything. TV, movies, books. You've heard all this before. That's what creative people do. You know. Okay, say I got an idea that I've got kind of, I got a kind of rough idea in my head. You know what the overall arc is. Now, then I write what I call a script. Now, this isn't a script like a screenplay or a movie script or a play or anything. Because this is more like a framework for the game. And I got my training from this book, Dream Park. This taught me how to write an adventure. It has a section here called Scripting the Game. And they break it down like you were doing an hour show or a movie or something like that. First of all, you start with the hook. The hook is what grabs the viewer or grabs the player or grabs the character and makes them want to do what you're supposed to do. What they're supposed to do. It gets the players involved. It can be any situation I'm quoting now that poses an immediate threat or interest to the players. I don't know, there's a suitcase full of gold or an ambush or something like that. That's a good thing. That gets them. I like to start my games in media res, which means in the middle of the action. So like okay, fine, they go to the tavern. They're not just, how they're going to meet in the tavern? They're in the middle of a bar fight. They're both crouched under a table. And, hi, how you doing? What's going on? That kind of thing. That's my favorite way of doing it. Anyway, that gets them involved. Then you have there are two types of developments then. One's called a cliffhanger. A cliffhanger it's like a contest. Here's another quote from the book. A contest whose outcome is in doubt up to the very end. So this could be anything, people in peril, a fight, hanging from a cliff. It kind of gets the adrenaline going. And that sort of propels the story a bit. You watch any Indiana Jones film, you see a lot of those. The other kind of development is called a development. And that's basically where you find out about stuff. They investigate. It's a scene where the plot, again, quoting, moves forward without a physical conflict. It's also known as a bump. This is where you get the exposition. This is where you get the, they found the old book and we've got to try and decipher the code. And oh my goodness, we found out that such and such's father. We go talk to this NPC who gives us information. And, you alternate between development, cliffhanger, development, cliffhanger, development, cliffhanger, until you get to the climax, which is the climax of the story, a great revelation, the fight for the big bad, the temple coming down, Luke, I'm your father, all that kind of stuff. And then it goes into the resolution, which is like the epilogue, where everybody's like, okay, you guys defeated him, you go back to the king, you give him his head on a plate, he gives you a dozen such gold, and you go on to the next adventure. Now, see, like I said, that isn't railroading, that's a framework. Because you just okay, these things are going to happen if the player characters aren't involved. Say the bad guy's got a plan, and he's going to and I take over the world. And say on the second stage of the plan, the PCs show up and they ruin the plan, or that part of the plan. So the bad guy's got to come up with something else, or get rid of them, or something like that. You see how it works. So that's my framework. Now, something else I found out that I use is there is a website called the Alexandrian. Very good role-playing site, very good gaming site. One of the things he came up with is you do not prep plots, you prep situations. As you can see in the way I do it with the cliffhanger development, there's certain a lot of them are like, okay, this is going to happen, and this is the situation. What do you do? What do the PCs do? The PCs find the mystical tablet, and the bad guys show up at the same time looking for the tablet. What are they going to do? They're going to fight him? They're going to run away? What? You don't know. You just got to be prepped for it. You try and think of, personally, if you try and think of everything the players are going to do, you're going to end up in the nut house. So, prep, say 2 or 3 things. If you know your NPCs and your villains real good, that should be no problem. Let me talk a little bit about winging it, because that's what's going to happen. That's part of your DM's bag of tricks. Every DM should know how to do it. When you wing it, or ad lib, or whatever you want to call it, you're going off script. You're not, it looks like you're pulling stuff out of your butt, but you're not pulling your stuff out of your butt. You're pulling stuff out of your prep, because you can prep for stuff like that. You know the area, you know the characters, how they're going to react. You have encounter tables, maybe some monsters, extra monsters written up. What's going to happen if they go off in this direction? Oh, I don't know what's going to happen if it's going off that direction. Well, let me find out. Let me look at my prep. I mean, at the worst case scenario, you should call a break and spend that 10-15 minutes figuring out what they're going to do next. No problem there. That way, you can just keep the game going, and if it ends up the way you think it should end up, fine. But if it doesn't, that's fine too. Like I said, there's no such thing as you shouldn't really railroad people. But like I said, you should be prepped for stuff. You should prep the area. What I'm saying is basically they're in a certain areas, and there's a bigger area. Prep the areas. Don't prep the game. And that's one of the biggest lessons I learned. Another thing I learned on my own was, I'll take the North Texas game I ran. Okay. I had an overarching plot about a vampire lord who doesn't want to be a vampire lord, and his grandfather's still alive and trying to frame him and bring back Orcus and things like that. Well, okay. I had all that going. I had 3 NPCs who have the bulk of what they call exposition. In other words, what's the plot all about? They're going to tell you. Well, I had the vampire lord from the mansion. I had the gravedigger who knew the vampire lord before he became a vampire. And I had the zombie master who makes zombies for the lord to use as labor. My zombies are not Romero zombies. My zombies go back to the original Haitian dead bodies reanimated for whatever. Sure, the guy can say, okay, attack them and even give them weapons or even bite them or whatever, but it's, basically they're mindless slaves. So I had the zombie master at the edge of the forest. I had the gravedigger, of course, in the graveyard, and the lord of the manor in the manor. Well, I had part of the story with the Lord, part of the story with the gravedigger, and part of the story with the zombie master. When I play tested this, the guys went boom, 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 because I kind of knew my group and they were going to do that. They went to investigate, and they got the story, and they knew what to do next. So, okay, con time comes around, time for me to run my game. The players that were at my table, the minute I told them that the zombie master lived in the edge of a forest that had a pack of werewolves, they wanted nothing to do with that zombie master, or we're not going anywhere near the forest, because they're like 3rd to 5th level pre-gen characters. So, okay, fine. I've got one less person for them to tell. Okay, all right. They already talked to the Lord of the Manor, and they got part of the story, and they're going to go do this thing, that, and the other thing. I'll give the rest to the gravedigger. No problem. You can take chunks of story and give them to certain NPCs, and if they don't get those NPCs, you can find another way for them to get it, or not get it, and see if they can use their investigative skills to get it. Because there were certain things that the gravedigger didn't want to tell them, but they did pretty good on like the intelligence rolls, things like that, and they figured out what what's what, and they were able to go stop the bad guy, which is good. So that's pretty much kind of how I do it, more or less. If I got any other good ideas, I will certainly pass it along. If you guys got any ideas or questions or anything like that, you can email me at oldmangrognard@gmail.com. Well, that's it for this time. Until next time, bye-bye. Take care.